So hello everyone, welcome to the panel this afternoon. This panel has been put on by the University of Wolverhampton and ArtsFest, and I'd like to thank the University of Wolverhampton for supporting this event, and especially to the events team who are supporting us technically. We're really looking forward to this afternoon talking a little bit about bisexual and pansexual representations in theatre. And with me today, I have three people who've been working in the industry. So I'll get them to introduce themselves first of all. So I'm going to do it in order of people on my screen. So at the moment, this is probably different for everybody, but Beth is on my left. So Beth, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. Hello, my name is Beth Hinton-Lever and my pronouns are she, her. I am going first, so I guess I have to set the precedent for how we're going to introduce ourselves. So I am an actor. What else to say? I've worked across musical theatre, Shakespeare, film, TV. Another kind of major part of my life is that I was born without my lower right forearm, so I'm also disabled, and I'm pansexual. I think I'll leave it there because I'm sure we'll talk further about my career and things like that, but that's a little introduction.
Thanks so much for that, Beth. Thank you. And thank you for going first as well. The next person I can see is Callum Heinrich. So do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Callum Heinrich. I've got a follow-up Beth now, tough act to follow. So I, pre-COVID-19, was in Mamma Mia musical in London. I'm an actor. I'm also a photographer. That's my other job. And I am a proud bisexual man. There you go.
Thank you, Callum. And then to Arun Blair-Mangat.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Arun Blair-Mangat. I am an actor and writer primarily. I don't ascribe really to pronouns. I kind of respond to anything. And I use bi-pan interchangeably, but actually I'd probably say I just love people. Yeah, but we'll unpack that later.
Thank you so much. So actually, I think that might be a really interesting place for us to start, is thinking a little bit, because one of the things I think is, I think it's difficult for everybody, but I think particularly for people who are attracted to many genders, more than one gender, it's really, this use of language and the use of words is really important. And actually, I think not so much because for the world to put you in boxes, but for you to be able to identify, I guess, to identify yourself, I don't know. And I would be interested to talk a little bit more about how kind of terminology works for you, or how, if you're happy to do that, how you identify. Yeah, I'm going to leave it there. How you identify. Who would like to go first? Now, Callum, do you want to go first on that?
Yeah, sure. I'm more than happy to start. So, as I said, I'm bisexual, and the reason that I say that is quite interesting. I was talking about it this morning, and basically, I think when it comes to pronouns and the way that not pronouns, our sexual orientation and pronouns and words that we use to describe ourselves, it's quite a tough one, because it almost feels like we're doing it to describe to people, giving them a word to describe us, if you know what I mean, to go, oh, that's what they are. Okay, I need to understand you, which is, I'm probably the same as Arun in the way that I don't really subscribe to that at all. Like, if I was to say to anyone what I am, I love people. I don't really like to put a kind of box on it. But the reason that I do put a box on it, and I said this in the thread that I spoke to you about, is that when I was growing up, I didn't have anyone who was bisexual or pansexual or anything to look up to. So the only really reason that I label myself as bisexual is so that kids growing up who don't understand these feelings and don't have that, have someone to go, oh, okay, that's kind of what I am. And like, I think there's so many words for different sexual orientations and stuff. And it's kind of in the same way emotions work. Like, if you think about, sorry, I'm going really ham here. If you go with like emotions and you've got, say, the umbrella term of sad, under that umbrella term, you've then got grief, you've got depression, you've got anxiety, like things like that. And for me personally, I feel like sexuality is very much in the same kind of thing. We've got the umbrella term of LGBTQA+. And then under that, you've got these fine, refined sexualities that help people understand themselves. And like, I kind of believe that it's just having those words that really help you feel at ease and like feel at one with yourself, if you know what I mean. So in that kind of sense, I use my identification as a bisexual man for myself and for no one else. I don't owe an explanation to anyone. There we go.
Thanks, Callum. I'm just posting in the chat. Callum's written a really excellent Twitter thread about being a bisexual, and I think that's a really great place for people to look for a further understanding of this. So that's there for you. Does anyone want to kind of build on that from what Callum's just said there? Let's pass over to Beth, if that's okay.
I would like to start by saying thank you, Callum. That was kind of a really beautiful explanation. And also thank you to Arun, because actually hearing everyone say, well, you know, it's for me, it's not for other people, is so relieving to actually hear other people say that and know that, because sometimes when, as Callum was saying, when we do label ourselves, it can feel laborious, and also it can feel like we're putting ourselves in boxes that we don't really belong in. So I would say I was pansexual, but it's ever changing and ever kind of fluid within that. So right now, that's how I would term how I feel, but it is constantly molding. And as both of you have said, it is just about love of people. And unfortunately, we do live in a world where we are still pretty much operating in, unfortunately, a binary, but definitely within labels and within those constrictions. So right now, within those constrictions, sometimes it is the easier option to have the option to label yourself. And pansexual just seems to be the one that stuck with me, but I actually don't think it refers to much about me. It doesn't tell you who I love, it doesn't tell you who I'm attracted to. It's just a word to make it easier to define a little bit, just get you closer to knowing me, but it's not necessarily me. So I guess that's kind of how I view the idea of labeling yourself. But it's a tricky, complex thing, and it's, as I say, forever changing. But yeah, I can't really add on what Callum said because it was wonderful, but that's just a little thing.
No, that's lovely. I mean, I think that thing about the idea that we're all kind of constrained by binaries is something that's really important. And one of the things that I love about talking to bisexual people is that it always challenges this idea that you are one thing or you are another thing. And I think that's really important. And the other thing you were talking about there, the idea of things being ever changing. I mean, I'd probably say now that I identify as a gay man, but I have had relationships with women in the past. Very happy relationships, and so but you know, things have changed. There are times in my life where I'm open to some sorts of relationships, and there are now times in my life where I'm open to different sorts of relationships. And it's really helpful when people are talking about that fluidity, I think, for all of us. Arun, is there anything you wanted to add at all?
I guess just for me personally, I love what you both said. It's incredible, so thank you. I would say that being biracial, I've always understood adopting different cultures, different communities, and kind of existing in a space between. So growing up, I kind of understood, oh, I'm fluid as a person in my race. I can be fluid in my sexuality. I can be fluid in all of kind of my expressions of identity. So it was always something that seemed tangible. And I think the reason why I shout so loudly about being bisexual, or queer, actually, I'd probably say a little bit more, is that I think it's important, like Callum said, to have that visibility and for the next generation to kind of see, oh, it's totally possible to be in the midst of your dreams and own innately who you are, which I think is really refreshing and really liberating. Like, don't get me wrong, we stand on the shoulders of so many who've come before us and really paved the way, but now we're moving away from the kind of binary, archaic system, and no longer will we live in a world, hopefully, that reinforces heteronormative ideals and actually will just allow us to be queer and colourful. So I know that we're in a position of privilege living in this country, arguably, I mean, maybe not so much right now, but I think it's important to sometimes, and I think it's wonderful, like you both said, using the labels for yourself more than anything. Like I largely shout about being Jamaican and Indian and a bit Spanish and a bit Irish and a bit Scottish because I think actually it's really cool. So I think it's wonderful to adopt as many terms or as little terms as you want to. That's your prerogative, and never feel like conditioned to do it for the benefit of others, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I often say to people when I teach sexuality, I'm often saying to people, the only reason that we use these words is because we're trying to is to try and find an understanding of differences, but actually any time that you use the words, it almost stops making sense, because you say, well, these people behave like this, then you find some of those people don't behave like this, they, you know, and so it becomes really, really difficult. So, and that's what I suppose some of the questions that we're starting to get here, I suppose that's the sort of thing that opens up this idea about representation in theatre and in musical theatre, because I think that perhaps might be interesting to talk about the differences, because most of you have worked across both of those things. It might be interesting to talk about the differences between working in theatre and working in musical theatre, and whether there are things in one genre or the other that you find more flexible or less flexible. Is that something that anyone could talk about at all? Arun?
I know Beth's going to probably build on this more beautifully, but I think, interestingly, straight theatre, for lack of a better phrase, tells a lot of queer narratives, and has done. And whether that's the classics like Tony Kushner's Angels in America, or The Normal Heart, Larry Kramer, or, I don't know, Shakespeare would always with fluidity and gender. And I'm trying not to swear, so that's why I censored myself. But I feel like in musicals, I don't want to generalize, but we often see us not reduced to narratives that are rooted in trauma, but like, I haven't until recently really played queer characters in musical theatre. And I feel like maybe it stems from the way that musicals exploded onto the scene, and with like MGM and all the kind of traditional tropes of the romance and the heteronormativity that was kind of perpetuated. And then if you are queer, you're often a gay man, or that's why things like Rent are amazing, don't get me wrong, but, or you're the sassy sidekick, or the bossy, bitchy, queenie Nelly. And I think the new wave of musicals is very, very exciting, but I want to see less of a disparity between the two mediums, because ultimately for me, they're very inextricably linked. And saying someone can be good at straight acting and not be good at musical theatre, or vice versa, I feel like we need to shift our mindset. Musical theatre actors, performers are the most talented, in my opinion, because you have to be a triple threat often. So I'm going off on a tangent, and I'm going to hand it over to someone else. But I do think that, unfortunately, there are differences, and there shouldn't be. And I feel like we need greater representation in the narratives and the characters that we're allowing on like musical theatre stages.
Thanks, Arun. And Beth, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think, I mean, what you said is so humbling to also hear, that it's just wonderful to actually have this conversation, because I think we ourselves know this within our hearts, that representation isn't there yet, but it's really lovely to actually have a conversation and know that other people are there with you. So thank you for that. But I agree. And I think I'll flag up now that I will, because of who I am as a person, as a queer disabled woman, I can't separate me being disabled and me being queer, because that's who I am as a person. So I've been very lucky to work in musical theatre and, well, across all the spectrum of our industry, really. And every character I've played has been queer and disabled, from virtue of me being queer and disabled, because I can't get rid of that part of me. People have tried, trust me, but you can't do that. So I think for me, the idea that I could be playing a character who is written as someone who is queer is phenomenal, because it's not happened for me personally yet. And I think non-disabled and heteronormative kind of people and neurotypical people and all of these things, when they write for us, for any marginalized community, what they do is create, a lot of the time, a palatable version of us. So, and not only palatable, but a kind of version that people feel safe knowing. So for me, within disability, it's usually you are the victim, or you're trying to overcome your disability. And within the queer community, it's usually the coming out story, or it's, you know, very diminutive to treat communities in that way. and kind of disregard all of the color and the life that we have and say, well, this is the only bit that you'd be interested in. And I think that's something that we could really work on within representation, because there's so much life and joy within this community that isn't seen. And because it's not seen, it becomes taboo in a way to show something that is so out there, like a happy queer. And that would be wonderful. I think that's my hope, that representation will move towards that sort of authentic representation, which really does come from us writing our own stories, us portraying ourselves, which I'm sure we'll get into in a different conversation. But I think that's just my 2 cents on that. I can't remember what the question was. I just ran. I'm so sorry.
No, that's perfect. I mean, one of the things that I love about what you're talking about there, one of the things I've got interested in recently is the idea, there's a concept called deaf gain, which I think has also been used in the disabled community as disability gain, which talks about what we gain, what people gain from being deaf or being disabled. And I was talking to a deaf artist about this, and we came up with this idea of whether there's something called queer gain, where when people are writing their own queer experiences, whether what it is about those experiences, and I think also actually actors playing queer characters that identify as queer as well. So the question isn't, should straight actors be allowed to play queer roles, or should straight writers be allowed to write queer characters? But to me, the more interesting question is, what do we gain when queer actors play queer roles? What do we gain when queer writers write queer stories? And I think that's something that might be interesting for us to touch on shortly. But sorry, Callum, I just wanted to see if there was anything you wanted to add there.
I mean, you two just absolutely smashed it out of the park with both those answers, which was absolutely beautiful. As personally, I've been out in the industry for 1 year, and I've spent that whole year in Mamma Mia, so I haven't been able to kind of explore other sides of our industry. That's the one. But I just like the thing that I wanted to add to it. I'm trying to remember it now because I'm so taken away by your two's answers. What was I going to say? I think, first of all, what Beth said about just being able to have this conversation, I just wanted to address that as well, because that is something that is just so incredible. Like, just take a second and take a mental picture of that. We're actually having a discussion about bisexual representation in musical theatre and pansexual, and it's just beautiful. But I think with regards to theatre and musical theatre, as Arun said, I believe that they are one and the same. Like, there isn't a strict line in the middle, there isn't. But I do think when it does come to the business side of theatre, when it comes to things like musical theatre, and you think about the long-running shows that the West End lives on, there is hardly any platform in the entirety of the UK, I'm going to say, to get new writing or new musical theatre on a scale to be seen by like many people, and people who themselves identify as queer, or people who are disabled, or like people of any minority background. Like, I think that's the problem with the UK kind of musical theatre scene. Like, theatre itself is great because you've got a lot of things like Fringe. In London, you have ever-changing cycles of plays that are going on. Like the National, for example, like the amount of queer plays I've seen, or minority-driven plays at the National, is incredible. But you see musical theatre, and it's kind of this thing, like, especially being in Mamma Mia, it was literally just like, step in, and that's it. We're not going to change anything. We're not like, you're going to do the role this. And as you said, Beth, and I think it's one of the best things I've ever heard, is that whatever role you play is going to be queer and disabled. I think that's so beautiful. And it's the same for us, I believe, Arun, if I'm speaking for you as well, that whatever role we play, we're going to take that part of ourselves into it. So like, even in Mamma Mia, I was ensemble cover Sky. And when I was on for Sky, that didn't change anything. I was still exactly me. I was still bisexual. I was still that. And they're like, and I talk to people about it, and they'd be like, yeah, but you're not, are you? Because the character's not. And I'm like, that's an interesting debate, but I'm not going to waste my time with you. But yeah, so like, that was my weird tangent 2 cents to add on the theatre thingy majiggy.
I'm so glad that that all of you have said that, actually. That one of the things, I remember interviewing a gay actor for a couple of years ago for the book that I'm currently working on, and I remember him saying, unless it is in the script, he plays every single character that he does as gay. unless there was something specifically in the script that says that he is romantically attracted to somebody. Now, the great thing with bisexual and pansexual and polysexual things is that there is not a single character in the whole of musical theatre that cannot be played as bisexual, pansexual or polysexual, because we do not see every single moment of any character's life at all. And I think that's one of the things that I would really encourage directors to explore with their actors is, and I'm so lucky to work with so many bisexual students at the University of Wolverhampton and pansexual students and gender non-binary students and all these things. And I think that's so important. So thank you all for bringing that up. So hopefully lots more bisexual characters, but we're thinking now about kind of moving on to explicitly characters that are bisexual, pansexual, polysexual. And we've got two questions, and they're both from master's students who've recently completed their MA with us at Wolverhampton. We do a little bit of work on, well, we did quite a bit of work on writing as part of the MA musical theatre module. And Beth Renton asked, what do you think writers can do to write more authentic bi and pan characters? And Nathan Shanley writes, as a bisexual person who recently finished their master's thesis on bisexual representation within musical theatre, how do you think is the best way, he's not sure about the use of word best there, but to represent these non-monosexual identities within the arts without falling into stereotypes and tropes? And we'll talk about, we'll do the second part of his question in a moment, because I think that's more than enough for us. So we're thinking about how can we write more authentic bisexual and pansexual characters without falling into stereotypes and tropes. Does anyone want to start on that? Yeah, go on, Callum.
I think this is just going to be reusing exactly what Beth and Arun said, but I believe that with regards to any kind of how do we improve the writing for this minority, or how do we improve the writing for this and this, you've got to stem it back to those people have to tell the story. I think that's how it has to be. And like, if you're looking at how do we write more authentic bi and pan characters, talk to bi and pan people and get bi and pan people to write those characters. If you know what I mean. Like, you wouldn't, I mean, I was just going to think of a stupid example of something, but it's already gone. You probably know like way better than what I was going to say, but that kind of thing is, you just need to get the authenticity of the character that you're trying to write. So I believe that if you're trying to write something, if you like for example, if a famous filmmaker or something was going to go and make a film about the Philippines or something, he wouldn't sit at his desk at home and create that thing. He would go to the Philippines and understand what that like kind of lifestyle is like and what those people are like and things like that. And I think that's the kind of way we have to go with bi and pan characters. You can't just be negligent and just kind of sit by yourself and come up with these characters without having the research or without yourself being, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Can I throw across to Arun there? Because I know you've been writing bisexual and pansexual characters as well.
Yes. Well, firstly, thank you for the questions, Elizabeth. I would say, in a simplistic level, we need to just write, because I feel like we're deterred, we're not encouraged to write, because it kind of goes back to what we said before, but we don't exist within the framework that we've seen time and time again. I'm a historian, I studied history at university, and I did that as well as like acting and pursuing my kind of dreams of being on stage. But I never would write an essay without pulling from sources, primary sources. So whether I was writing about the partition of India, then looking literally at first-hand sources that are stored in the LSE library, or, you know, listening to archival footage, I don't understand how people have the audacity or the caucasity, as I often say with my friends, to write narratives without talking to people or understanding or illuminating authentic experiences and using that as a stimulus. But people do that because they're never challenged, and we need to hold these people accountable. Time and time again, I will do rehearsed readings or workshops, and people are like, oh yeah, like they're using language and they're using terminologies, and I'm reading these characters that are so two-dimensional, and they're often black or black and at the end, when we have to share experiences or thoughts and feelings on that, I have to raise a flag and be like, you can't just innately assume that everyone who's black speaks in a specific way. And it's the same with the queer community. Not everyone's like, yes, Queen Hunty, yes. Some people are, and that's amazing. But then when we're bringing bisexuality or pansexuality into that, and it kind of links, or maybe I saw a question that's coming up later on and we'll touch on that. But there's so much biphobia and panphobia in the industry, and it's just never discussed. because I think when we discuss queer narratives and queer representation in theatre, we align that with gay, cisgendered white men. And we actually are overlooking white women. We're overlooking everyone else. But like, if there's a hierarchy, I think the most disenfranchised person is probably a Black woman, or a Black female identifying person, or even non-binary person. And I think we really need to shift the mindset. And the way that we do that is we write, we put on rehearsed readings, we invite people to come and see this, we make it known that the representation on the stage is often drawn from fantasy. We might as well have, I don't know, a mythical mermaid on stage half the time, because I'm like, this holds no truth. So I think we really do just need to write. And I know that sounds simple, and it's hard, and it's frustrating, but it's coming and it's changing, and the theatre industry will take notes, especially after everything that's happened. It has to. Otherwise, we're not going to show up or show out. That sounds a bit pessimistic, but I promise it's optimistic.
I think that's so important, because I think sometimes as a theatre industry, we forget how many people are. I mean, not that it should be ever on numbers, but there are so many, but there is such a big bisexual, pansexual, polysexual audience out there waiting to see themselves. And I think that's such an important thing. And I think the thing that you picked up there as well about female identifying queer characters, absolutely there, you know, what I will do in a moment is I will share, I've been working on a musical, queermusicals.com, and I've been trying to identify musicals which are maybe not so well known, but that have got lesbian, bisexual characters who are Black or mixed race or whatever it might be, just so people know that those musicals do exist. There may not be loads of them that you can watch all the way through, but you can certainly follow YouTube channels, you can follow Twitter profiles, and you can watch these musicals in development. Beth, was there anything you wanted to add on that last point there?
Again, thank you both. Incredible answers. I think with writing, personally, for me, writing is activism. It's a political act. So we shouldn't edit ourselves, because if we're being authentic and we're being true to ourselves while we're writing, that's the best we can be. And whatever we are then writing, if we are not editing ourselves, if we're truly being our beautiful idiosyncratic selves, it's authentic. And as Arun said, just keep going, just keep writing, get your friends together and read and work together and work out what doesn't sit right. And then you not only end up with these beautiful opening conversations where we get to talk about what it is to be queer, what it is to be in this industry, what it is to be out, all of these things. And when we write and we have those conversations, we become aware of what is a trope and what is true. And for me, that's helped me. But yeah, as I say, writing is a political act. So I always try and herald that and keep that in my heart while I am writing, to make sure that I don't fall into those traps.
Thanks, Beth. Go on, Arun, sorry.
Beth just reminded me of something that I was told by my writing mentor, which is literally write every day, because you get better. Like sometimes I feel like my voice is so rested because I'm not singing 8 times a week. I'm like, oh my God, hello, Tap D. But that doesn't often happen. Sometimes your voice is crap one week and it gets worse to get better. But with writing, I actually feel like every day I get better. And sometimes you hit a wall, but I would just encourage you, like Beth said, just to write. Like it's the most cathartic, liberating thing I've ever done in my life. And I've only ever felt braver than I have today, and then tomorrow I'll feel even more brave to tell like more authentic stories. And you have to break it down. Like you have to understand that you'll start writing something and you'll make it palatable, but subvert, like Beth was saying, all the tropes and the archetypes, and you only know the mistakes you make once you've made them. So write, make mistakes, write again. And writing is in the rewriting. I could talk about writing forever, so I'm going to stop now. But yes, just write. We need your stories. Duncan, I think you're there and you're writing. So come on, everyone. Yes, right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Arun, for that. So the other thing, I think we've touched on this a little bit, but do you find that you experience internalized bi or panphobia? And do you feel like sometimes you feel like you're not queer enough? And how do you deal with that? That's from Bex. Go on, Callum.
Right, so this is something I'm very, very passionate about. So I'm very glad. Bex, thank you so much for asking that question. The first time I ever went to Pride in London was with a group of friends that I had, and I was probably about 16 years old, and I was a out bisexual man. All of my friends knew I was bisexual. I was like completely to the world, I was bisexual. And I remember walking into Pride, into Trafalgar Square, seeing all these beautiful people and enjoying it. And a friend in my friends group, his name's Harry, he's gay, and he was crying. He was so happy he'd found like this group of people. And I remember looking at him and going, I'm so happy for you right now. And I was like, completely forgot. There was no pride there for me, because I was like, there's so much biphobia that I'm sure, I don't know if I'm speaking like for other people, but there's so much biphobia that I felt for myself. I don't feel it as much anymore, but like internalized biphobia and internalized panphobia and any kind of phobia it's really real, and it's a real like something that needs to be addressed and spoken about a lot more, because like that is something that I always live with, is that thought of going to Pride and being at Pride and being like LGBT, being the B, like, and like being a part of it, but literally not seeing a single bi flag, not seeing a single like anything, and just being like, this is so great, I'm so happy for these people, and just like that kind of internalized biphobia. So yeah, I do completely find that I do still have to this day biphobia, and even being asked to be on this call, I felt that imposter syndrome straight away. I felt that kind of thing of going, oh no, but like there are people who are like who deserve it better than me and stuff like that. So it's the same kind of strand.
Let's unpick that. Why did you feel imposter syndrome? And why do you feel more loving when it's your sexuality and only you know that?
I mean, it's something. It's a tough. I don't really know, Aaron. I'm not going to lie to you. But like, I think it is just that internalized biphobia that I've had for my whole life. That kind of growing up, thinking that I need to be this strong, straight male. Like growing up in that kind of environment. I grew up playing a lot of rugby. I grew up surrounded by like that kind of testosterone fueled environment. I'm saying that as just like a generalization of the kind of boyhood growing up. And I think like even now, like I'm so proud of who I am now, and I'm so proud to be bisexual, and I will scream it from the rooftops, and I will like not stop. But like I think growing up and not having the representation and not seeing myself in anyone else, and not seeing that at all, was so that's what pushed me down so much. And still to this day, even feeling that kind of what I was just saying, imposter syndrome of being on this call, was that kind of, oh yeah, but there's so many other issues that we need to speak about. And I'm like, and like you said, I need to be like, no, this is my truth. This is what I need to do for myself. So thank you, Aaron, for calling that out. Because
also not stronger than you realize, because the fact that you are openly out, bi, pan, in the industry, working, young, tenacious, at the forefront, advancing change, means that you're very strong. Because I have a plethora of friends within my community who would never even want to tweet, let alone jump on a call, because maybe they don't feel like they need to, or they want to, or feel safe to, or it might hinder their career. So the fact that you are advocating in such a beautiful, public, important way means you're strong. And strength and testosterone do not align or equate to sexuality as well.
I completely agree with that. Thank you so much.
Just saying it out loud.
No, you're so right. And I think like exactly what Aaron just said, anyone who's watching this now, I think that's exactly the same. Like, please know that like before this call, I was scared. Like you're going to be scared before you jump off, off a plane with a parachute, you're going to be scared. Before you take that leap, you're going to be scared. So just know that like, I was scared before I did this, but you can still do this. So like, yeah, there you go. Thank you, Aaron. You're amazing.
Thank you. Beth, there's another question here that I'd love to ask you about. When you're challenging the stereotypes in the industry, do you find it scary, or do you think that it's something that's quite risky to do? Or are you finding support in the industry? I'm quite interested to know what you think in there.
That is such a brilliant question. Thank you. There's a lot to unpack within it. So I think I will probably flounder around and then possibly get to a point. So I apologize if it's not fluent, or if I don't actually reach a point on it. Yes, it is terrifying. I think that will be the first thing to say. I'm so proud of who I am, but the hatred I feel towards myself is quite strong for many different reasons. But it is terrifying to be that person. And as Arun said earlier, I am standing on the shoulders of absolute giants. People have paved the way for disabled people, for women, for queer people, so that I can be safe to be out. And that is huge. But it is scary, and we're not there. We are not there yet in any regard to what I just mentioned. So we need to keep pushing forward. I never thought I would be in a position where I would have a platform, let alone in this industry. Similar to Arun, I was an archaeologist. I was not an actor. I went to UCL, and then I taught English, and then I accidentally fell into this career. So I was so lucky to find my voice reflected back to me within the industry in amazing theatre companies like Grey Eye, who are a disabled-led theatre company. So when I found them, and well, they found me really, and when I went to go work for them, they taught me how to be myself. They taught me how to be political, how to be honest, but without being aggressive. And that's probably the best piece of advice I was ever given, because my default was defense, because that's what we're taught as queer people, as women. We're taught to remain defensive because we are somehow attacking the norm. We're attacking the typical, so we are dangerous in that respect. So learning how to be political, an activist, how to be myself, how to be assertive was all down to other people. That's not something I had within myself. So I think one thing to say there is, if you don't see your voice, if you don't see yourself reflected in the industry, wonderful. Be that person, be that voice, write that story, be the person, because it is terrifying. But as soon as you put yourself in that position, your family will find you. And that's exactly what happened to me. And I am still very lucky. And that's why I feel so lucky to be right here, right now, talking about sexuality, because I feel like this will consolidate that family, not only for me, but for everyone on this call and everyone watching too, to know that we are a big, strong force of people, and we should be able to stand up for ourselves. Yeah, so I think the best thing I can say is find that family. And if you don't see yourself reflected, don't take that as no one wants you. Take that as the opportunity to make your voice heard, make sure your truth is out there. And it will never stop being scary. As Callum said, it will never stop being scary, but it is worth the fear. It truly is. I'm getting very emotional because I'm gonna stop speaking.
Thank you so much, Beth, for that, and you know, and everybody for the thoughts there. We've got a few more questions. I don't want to rush any of these. Oh, go on, Arun. Sorry, I'll let you go in there. Sorry.
That was beautiful. I was actually like so here for that. You need to do a TED talk. But side note, it's answering the second part of that question. The reality is sometimes speaking up and speaking out is a risk, but it's a risk worth taking. I was taping for a TV role end of last year, and yeah, it would have been amazing, and it was going to be on a big show. And my agent sent it to me. He'll probably kill me for saying this, and he was like, "Oh, it's bisexual. Yeah, great." And I was like, just because it's bisexual doesn't mean I'm the perfect person for the role, or even right for it. But I was like, I'll read it. And I was like, cool, yeah, all right, great. I taped, and he was like, it's not funny enough. And I was like, okay, but what do you want me to do to make it funny? And basically I had to lean into an archetype or a trope. And I just said, that's not what I would bring to it, because I innately am part of the character. But by leaning into certain expectations of what you might think someone is, by becoming a bit queer and a bit more gay in one of the scenes, and then being a bit more abrasive and know-it-all, I guess, I just felt like this isn't for me. So you have to, and I didn't get the job, and my friend did, and he's going to be excellent at it. But I think sometimes by being authentic and being truthful and being risky and missing out on a role is maybe the right thing to do. And I now feel more bolstered than ever before, just to be honest with myself first and foremost. Do I want to be aligned with that creative team and with that role? And yes, money can talk, but actually my integrity speaks louder, and you know, there's more volume. So right now, you know, arguably the industry's been decimated, but we need to build it up from the ashes in the right way. There's no point just implementing the pillars that were inherently eroded and broken. So yeah, it is risky, but take the risk.
Thank you. Thanks, Aaron, for that. So we've got a question from Josie. They're another writer on our MA. Oh, in fact, they are now doing a PhD. So they said they completely relate to your comments about imposter syndrome, and they wonder what your thoughts were about the traditional linear narrative that prevails in musical theatre, and how non-linear narratives in musicals could perhaps provide unique opportunities for telling bi, pan, polysexual stories. And it's one of the things that we sometimes talk about in our research group that we have at the university, our LGBT research group, is how much easier it is to be able to tell polysexual stories when in a TV series, when you've got loads and loads of space, and you've got loads of space to do flashbacks and narratives and all of those genre things, as opposed to very traditional musical theatre. So I was wondering whether you have any ideas about what sort of ways we might be able to use non-linear narratives or other tools that we have to be able to tell bisexual, polysexual, pansexual stories more clearly, I suppose. Does anyone want to try that one? Thanks, Callum.
Sure. I don't know how good I'm going to be at answering it, but like my 2 cents with like the kind of idea of bisexuality being represented in linear and non-linear theatre. I think I've spoken to James about this, and I think it's something that we can all agree on, is that it's going to be really hard in a short space of time to get across the point of bisexuality without falling into the trope of this person has multiple relationships, this person is actively sexual, this person is this, because that is to society's norm of bisexuality. If you spoke to someone and was like, oh, this person's bisexual, to that person who probably, if I'm saying they're heteronormative and they don't understand it like fully, their thought straight away might be, oh, okay, so this person has sex with male and female, this person has sex with multiple people, this person, you know, that kind of thing. So I think it is a difficult like thing to display in that kind of sense with regards to what you're saying about linear and non-linear musical theatre narratives, without it coming across as gimmicky or falling into the tribes that you guys like were saying. But I think it goes back to what we were saying in the previous question, that to show authentic bisexual, pansexual beings in musical theatre, it's just telling authentic stories from their lives. It's not about displaying their sexuality. It's not about displaying like their like relationships, that kind of side. It's displaying the humanity of it, because the more humanity people see in things, the more people connect to things.
Thanks, Callum. Go on, Aaron.
Josie, question, amazing. Write it, frame it, got it, love it. Okay, so, and kind of links to what I was saying about like the classical musical movies that permeated onto Broadway, and then obviously they're now like legacy musicals. Imagine the last 5 years, but with a queer couple. You're already messing up with the timelines. Like, how exciting is it that it doesn't have that kind of like linear quality? Or like, I don't know, you see Act 1 play out, and then there's an interval, and then you completely F with the form. And I think you're right. I think we should break down the confines or constraints that we kind of just accept and digest with regards to musical theatre. The Inheritance was amazing. And also I had lots of thoughts and feelings, but what was great is that it was kind of like binging a Netflix show and you saw it in 2 parts. Imagine you went to see a musical in 2 parts, or across a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Yeah, that adds up, I know. And I'm a massive advocate of like digital theatre, but I think there's something there. I don't really have an answer. I'm more asking questions, but I think that's really, really, I'm looking at it now, like non-linear narratives in musicals could perhaps provide unique opportunities for telling bi-pan polysexual stories. Yes, I completely concur and agree, but I don't have the solution. Things I'm working on, I want to explore the musical 9, but with a plethora of genders, trans, non-binary, male, female, because, and also the protagonist might change, or maybe we're making a commentary without making a commentary. We're just casting the best people for the job and then letting it fly. Like imagine Unusual Way sung by Beth, and then A Call from the Vatican sung. If you don't know the musical, then I'm just referencing random songs, excuse me. But Penelope Cruz, bae, life, love her. Like imagine Callum plays that role. Like inherently then they bring a sense of their energy. And I think, yeah, I am not answering the question. I'm just so excited by it. So great, so great.
Thanks, Aaron. That's amazing. Go on, Beth. Join in.
I'm so hyped. I think it's pretty much going off what everyone else has said, but I actually, if we write love stories, if that's what you want to be, if you write political dramas, whatever it is, but then just cast authentically and cast whoever is correct, and if they are happen to be queer, it becomes that story. I think there's a lot of pressure that we put on ourselves to create the narrative. The narrative exists, we just have to let it live. So if we cast these people and we encourage them to be able to be themselves and explore, because I think that's what our job is as actors, we find the truth in things, which is why I say that whoever I play, no matter who they are, they will have, well, they are me. They're an extrapolation of me. They're me, but dialed up on this one part of myself. So I think the stress is less on how do I create this and more on, well, how do I say what I want to, but then queer it? I think that, like, I really want to swear, how do we change something to make it queer? So then we're taking away the pressure of, well, this is the only thing that's being produced that's queer and it needs to say this, it needs to cover all of these points. It doesn't. And I think if we take that pressure off ourselves, we can edit ourselves less, so that what we're creating is that messy, beautiful miasma of queerness. I think that's, yeah, I'm again going to stop speaking because I will just go, but great question.
What if I said that the gag is that everything is queer and we've been led to believe otherwise?
Well, exactly. Calamity Jane, I'm sorry, they have a song called A Woman's Touch. Like, they're not straight.
Nothing better than a woman's touch.
They are not straight women, you know? Like, I think this is the thing. Like, we just need to realize that it's our lens as well, the way that we view theatre. As I say, I'm always queer in shows. I see a lot of queer things in things that people don't see just because of who I am. So I guess, Josie, it's not even advice, it's just like a massive amount of love for you, but take the pressure off, because you're already asking that question. It's already the whole battle, honestly. So just write, and then let's play, pretty much.
I'm so glad. Thank you so much, everyone, for that. And I'm so glad you brought up Calamity Jane, because it's one of my biggest wishes is to see Calamity Jane as a bisexual character. We're doing a little concert for LGBT History Month in a couple of weeks' time, and one of my students is singing Secret Love with a bisexual what's the word I'm looking for? When you
Characterization.
That's it. Yeah. And you can, if you are interested in that at all, there are tickets to that on our LGBT History Month page, which I'll put up shortly. I think we've got about 3 more questions left. I don't know if we have time to get through them. We've got 5 questions, but I'm going to make them into 3, and we'll just see how we get on with those. So there's a question here which is about, I think it's about allyship, but it's also about parenting as well. So this is from Abigail, who says, I'm a drama teacher and an ally. What do you think is the best way to support a student when they're discovering their sexuality and they don't necessarily have support from their peers, whether that's parents or friends? And Tracy asked, how have your family members supported you in all your life choices? Did it make life easier or harder? And asking as a mother. So there's kind of 2 different things there. But so, I mean, one thing I would say, just I guess as a drama teacher or musical theatre teacher myself, the most powerful thing is try and make a space for that student to find their family. And if they haven't got a space to find their family, try and be that for them as they need it. Our LGBT research group, I really should probably say this as part of this, it is less about the research, although that is done there, and more about the LGBT. It's about my students, my LGBT students, being able to find each other and to have each other there to support them, as well as be able to talk to people from different generations. Apparently I am now middle-aged, which is such fun. So that's one of the things I would suggest there, but I will hand that over to Beth, Callum and Arun, that question about the kind of the role of the teacher and I guess the role of parents as well. Does anyone want to answer that?
I would say I was really lucky. I had teachers that would literally give me plays and books, whether that was like, or telling me about people like Terrell Alvin McCraney, or I'm really lucky. I have a beautiful family. I have 3 brothers. They're my best friends, and my parents are very in my mind, what parents should be, which is supportive. But I grew up reading like James Baldwin, so I would find my friends in text and plays and poetry and read Lorca. And now we are equally the most informed and misinformed generation, or even just people ever, because there's so much content out there, can be really overwhelming, but you have incredible resources. And I think it's just about like guiding your students or your kids or in the right direction. So if you pick up on little statements or sentiments, or you hear whether it's a microaggression or a straight up homophobic statement, know that, obviously I know that you know that, but speak up and say no, and then allow that student to really understand that what was said was wrong, and whatever they feel or however they feel about that statement being said to them is valid, and validate that. But yeah, I would, if they don't have a safe environment or a sanctuary in their home, I think try and create that in the art that you give them, or the plays that you put on in drama school or drama class. Like, and you know, if that bully said that statement, then you cast him as flipping Briar Walter or whatever it is. You could be like, you got to listen and learn now. You know what I mean? So it's just about creating that safe space.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to add to that idea of teachers or parents or anything like that at all? No? Oh yeah, okay. Either Callum or go on, Beth. Yeah.
I was just gonna say I can't add to it. I think that was perfect. But yeah, just ensuring that they have the agency to either find a community and a safe space or entrust in you. And it's amazing to hear that you say you're an active ally, and that's the best thing you could be. And I think use those words, especially as a formative idea of, as we were saying at the beginning, those labels that actually are kind of constrictive, but when we first find this community, can be really helpful. So don't be afraid of failing as well. I think don't try and edit yourself into being tongue-tied that you can't speak to them. Just be very honest with them and say, look, I might not understand everything, but I am a safe person to talk to with whatever it might be, and give them the agency as well to know that it's not jokes, it's not a straight line, you know. You don't go from where you start to where you end up. It's a constant shifting, beautiful thing. But yeah, I mean, as Arun said, community is key for me.
Thanks, Beth. Callum, did you have anything you wanted to add there?
No, honestly, both of what you guys said is completely beautiful. It's just giving that person space to grow. So yeah, completely what these guys said.
Yeah, go on, Arun. Sorry.
I'll be really quick. Also, though, to the teacher, oh, I've lost your name. Where are you in answered? Well, also, I would say that if you do at some point say something and the student's like, oh, but miss or sir, oh, I can't remember who said the question, or teacher, well, I'm not queer, I'm not gay, what do you think? Don't feel like you've made any mistake, because they're on their journey. They might not be, but quite often they are. Like, I remember at school, everyone would be like, "Oh, you're so gay. Like, why are you so gay?" But I'm not gay. I'm not gay. Like, I'm just me. And it took me a while to realize like what my definition of queer looked like. And I remember when I used to I had girlfriends until I was 21, and then when I fell in love with a boy for the first time, some of my school was like, "I told you you're gay." I'm like, well, actually, mother clucker, I'm not. I love people, but this is and I think like I was really lucky that my drama teacher was really supportive and of the queerness that I exuded in school without really knowing it openly, maybe. But I think don't worry if you say something and then you feel like you offended them, because often they'll be like, oh damn, they see me, and I appreciate that they see me even if I'm not okay with saying it out loud just yet. If that made any sense, I hope it did.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all very much for that. I've got a question here about the first time that you felt represented, and I've got two questions here. One's from Nathan, who says, what was your first moment in seeing a character or hearing a song or that sort of thing where you felt represented or connected to in some way? And also, this is an anonymous question. They said, I'm currently questioning my sexuality. Did you ever see a character role that you felt reflected you during a time where you might have been unsure or questioning? So kind of looking at a general question around when you first saw yourself represented, if at all that's happened. Go on, Callum.
Again, I don't really have a straight answer for you. But I believe I still I don't think I've still fully seen myself represented in a piece of art, but I think the closest I found, and it's not actually a bisexual character. If you guys have seen Sex Education, it's Jackson in Sex Education when he's trying so hard to please other people that he ends up harming himself. And I think that was something that I really applied to my bisexuality. And it was, I'm trying so hard to fit in to society standards of normality and societal kind of pressures of being either this bisexual man or this straight man. And like we were saying earlier, it's, I love people, like that's how it is. It's not that kind of thing. It's having that fluidity. And I think seeing a character who I deemed as like this strong man who I kind of saw myself in, seeing him have that self-harm and that thing about having to please everyone. I think while we don't have the representation that we're aiming for, you can find things that you relate to in certain things. So even though that wasn't about sexuality, I applied that to my sexuality and I saw myself. And I think that's why this discussion in art is so important, because you need to see yourself reflected.
Thanks, Callum. Anyone else? Has anyone else seen themselves represented? Go on, Beth.
Oh, Aaron, I knew you were going to do that to me. No, I haven't, in a short word. But that excites me. It really depressed me for a long time. And I think the reason it excites me is because I now write, I have a good foundation behind me, and I know that I might not be able to put on a show with the biggest kind of captive audience possible, because we're not there yet, especially not in musical theatre. If you look at the fabric of the people that make up musical theatre, not only in on stage, backstage, who's writing it, who's producing it, we're still quite really trying to think of a kind way of putting it, but we all know what I'm trying to get to. So we're still there. But the fact that there is space there for me and my voice and my community and who I am, because no one will ever truly represent me because I'm not anyone else and they're not me. So the way to see myself represented is, as Callum has said time again in this beautiful chat, to be out and open if it's possible and if you feel safe to. So that's how I'm hoping that I will see myself represented and other people might see elements of themselves, as Callum said. But quick answer, no, but I don't inherently see that as the awful thing I once thought it was. But yeah, I'm hoping that possibly from what me and everyone around me are doing, people will start to be able to see elements of themselves and use that to galvanize themselves to put themselves in a position where they might be able to see them on stage one day, if that's what they choose to do.
Thank you, Beth. I think, is it okay if we finish with one more question? Oh, apparently we're in competition with a masterclass with Russell T Davies. Whoa. The recording of this will be available at the end, and I'll make sure I will send the link out through my Twitter, but also through I'll try and get the Eventbrite team to send it out as well. So there's one question. I've deliberately saved this question until last because I think it's such a positive one to finish on. What makes you feel really validated? Does anyone have any answers for that? Thanks, Callum.
This conversation. This is the most validating thing I think I've ever had, is to be able to speak to people who I see myself in. I think like that's probably the most validating thing. So that's my one for today.
Thanks, Callum. Anything else? It's quite a hard question, that, isn't it? Go on, Arun.
It is a hard question, actually. I think for me, I'm learning to not look for validation outside of myself, so from other people, which is really hard as an actor and a writer, because you want people to be like, this writing is amazing, it speaks to me, or that acting moved me, Arun, you're so good. And actually it's like, how do I feel in the moment? Do I feel liberated and free, or do I feel challenged and excited and stimulated? Like, I loved Juliet, but in so many ways, actually, I felt debilitated and tired and frustrated because I have so many things I wanted to do within that role and say, but within the confines of a mainstream musical, and when your art is actually not integral to the story, even if you think it is and want it to be, there's only so much that can be said. And it was incredible that the writer even wrote me and allowed me to have my say and voice and bring that queerness and gender queerness to the forefront. But then when you see iterations of script and you realize, okay, it's maybe not as important as I want it to be or think it is, I had to realize the validation doesn't come from that. The validation comes from me being able to perform an essence of something and me being able to perform authenticity or write authenticity in my scripts. And it's corny, but validation comes from love. And actually, it's the love within yourself. Because I only really learned to love myself like 2 years ago. And I'm in my late 20s, so it took me a while. But yeah, love yourself. You know, RuPaul always says, how the hell are you going to love somebody else if you don't love yourself or something like that? I've butchered that, but you know.
Thanks, Aaron. Beth?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what both of you have said, this has been wonderful. I think validation does come from yourself, but for me, it comes from time and space. And that I'll explain that a little bit because I know it sounds wanky, but in the moment, I will never be truly happy with what I've done. I will always think of other ways of which that could have gone better, or I could have done that right, or that person didn't look like they were really engaged with me, or maybe I didn't do. So I find it very hard to find that sort of validation while I'm doing something. But then the time and the space away from it, being able to look back at something, that's when I feel proud, and that's when I feel valid in the choices I made and what I did, which I guess isn't really an answer, but it kind of says more about me than anything else. But trusting the process, and trusting yourself that the choices you make in that moment are right for you, and then you can look back and either you're going to learn from it, or you can look back and feel that fervent validation and pride of what you and whoever was around you and your community and your family did or are going to do. And I think, I mean, it's an archaeology thing, right? I look to the past to know the future, and I look to the past to learn and glean more information about myself and my peers. So I think time and space, and just trust where you're at and trust that you are doing what's right, and whatever journey you are on, it's a journey. You are never going to be finished.
Yes. Wait, can we also do Jurassic Park the musical? Because like archaeology is basically paleontology, and you'll be such
Jurassic Park the musical. I'm in.
Be Jeff Goldblum. You got the hair, and I'll be Sam Neill.
Sorted.
What I want is a Mad Max musical. Why would they CGI someone's arm out when I'm right here?
Oh my God.
Happen.
Write it. Write it.
Make it happen. Just get the rights and make it happen.
You have heard it first here, everybody. I would just want to say thank you so much to our panelists today, to Beth Hinton-Lever, Callum Heinrich, and Arun Blair-Mangat. And just to say it's such a joy to know all of you and to have been able to interact with all of you. And you are such an inspiration to me and to, I know, to my students and to the people that have been at this panel today. And thank you also to all the people that asked questions. I hope we've answered them as best we can. We have another event next week, a queer writing panel with Finn Anderson, Tanya Azevedo, and Laura Shine, and that you can get tickets to Eventbrite for that. That's at 4 o'clock next Friday. But thank you all so much for joining us. I will send a link out to the video if you want to share it with people at a later date. Thank you also to our events team for all the support today. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye.